A giant space station floated in the darkness between stars. It was bigger than most planets, made of materials that shone with their own light. This was Nexus Prime, the home of the Galactic Council. Inside its massive halls, 12 different alien species gathered for the most important meeting in thousands of years. Ambassador Zethkar stood at the center of the room. His blue skin glowed softly in the dim light. Around him sat beings that looked nothing like each other. Some were tall and thin like living crystals. Others were short and round with too many eyes. A few didn't even have solid bodies, but floated as clouds of gas that somehow could think and speak. All of them were afraid. "The humans have done it," Zethkar said, his voice echoing in the chamber. "They have broken the light barrier. Their ships can now travel faster than light itself." A ripple of worry passed through the room. The crystal beings chimed like broken bells. The gas clouds swirled faster. Even the ancient council leader, Vexthul, who had lived for over 50,000 years, shifted uncomfortably on his floating throne. "How is this possible?" asked Jorvuk, whose body kept changing shape as he spoke. "We have watched them for decades. They still fight wars with each other. They poison their own planet. They can't even agree on simple things like what to eat or how to live." Vexthul's many eyes focused on the hologram floating in the center of the room. It showed a blue and green planet, Earth. Small ships moved around it, primitive compared to what the Council used, but they were definitely faster than light. "That is exactly the problem," Vexthul said, his voice deep and tired. "Every species that has joined our council followed the same path. First, they learned to live in peace with themselves. Then they cleaned up their world. Then they reached for the stars. The humans have skipped all the early steps." Kethra, the tallest of the crystal beings, spoke with a voice like singing glass. "Our mind readers have studied them from far away. Each human mind is different. They don't think alike. They don't want the same things. How do they even work together?" "They don't," said Lysam, her words coming as flashes of light. "They compete. They fight. They argue about everything. But somehow they still build amazing things." The Council had been watching humanity for 40 Earth years. They had seen humans land on their moon, build space stations, and send robots to other planets. But they had also seen humans fight terrible wars, destroy forests, and let millions of their own people starve while others lived in luxury. "Look at their history," Zethkar continued, waving his hand to make new images appear. "In the same century, they created beautiful art and music, but also weapons that could destroy their entire world. They saved dying species while making others extinct. They helped each other during disasters, then started new wars over resources. The images showed humans doing incredible things. They showed doctors saving lives, scientists making discoveries, and ordinary people helping strangers. But they also showed battles, pollution, and cruelty that made the Council members look away. "No species has ever been like this," Vexthul said. "When we first met the Zephyrians, they had already learned to share one peaceful mind. The Corvin Collective had been working together as one for millions of years. Even the wild astral communion had found harmony before they left their world. But humans," Jorvuk said, his form shifting into something that looked worried, "humans are chaos, pure chaos. And now they have the power to bring that chaos to the stars." In the depths of space, far from the council meeting, Dr. Elena Rodriguez worked alone in her small laboratory. She didn't know that alien eyes were watching her every move. She didn't know that the strange object her ship had found was not lost space junk, but a test. The object was beautiful, made of materials that seemed to shift and change when she wasn't looking directly at them. It was clearly artificial, but like nothing humans had ever built. Elena had been studying it for weeks, trying to understand how it worked. She was a xenobiologist, a scientist who studied the possibility of alien life. For years, she had wondered if humans were alone in the universe. Now she was holding proof that they were not. The object was definitely made by intelligent beings, and those beings were far more advanced than humanity. Elena didn't know that touching the object had sent a signal across the galaxy. She didn't know that her DNA, her thoughts, even her dreams, were being recorded and analyzed by computers more powerful than anything on Earth. She was just a scientist doing her job. But she had just triggered the most important test in human history. Back on Nexus Prime, the Council continued their debate. Some members wanted to contact the humans immediately, to guide them before they could cause damage. Others wanted to destroy them before they became a threat. But Vexthal had a different idea. "We will test them," he announced, "just like we test every species that reaches for the stars. But this test will be different. Humans are different, so they need a different kind of challenge." The other council members looked confused. The traditional tests were simple. A species had to prove they could live in peace and work together. They had to show they could be trusted with advanced technology. They had to demonstrate wisdom and self-control. "What kind of test?" asked Kethra. Vexthal's ancient eyes gleamed. "We will offer them everything they want. Technology to end hunger, disease, and war. Knowledge to heal their planet and reach the stars safely. All the wisdom of our billions of years in space. And if they accept," Jorvik asked, "then they will become our junior partners, guided by our wisdom until they are ready to be trusted with full independence. It might take thousands of years, but they will be safe." "And if they refuse?" Vexthal smiled, an expression that was both sad and proud. "Then they will be truly dangerous and truly free." The council voted. The test would begin soon. None of them knew if humanity would pass or fail, but they all knew that the galaxy would never be the same again. On Earth, Eleni Rodriguez continued her work, unaware that she held the future of her species in her hands. The test had already begun, and there was no going back. 6 months after Elena Rodriguez found the strange object, the sky above Earth changed forever. It started with a shimmer, like heat waves rising from hot pavement. Then the stars began to bend and twist in impossible ways. Captain Jake Morrison was eating breakfast on his ship when the alarm started screaming. "Sir, you need to see this," his communications officer called out. Lieutenant Amy Parker was staring at her screens with wide eyes. "We're getting readings that don't make sense." Jake rushed to the bridge of his ship, the Earth Defense Vessel Defender. Through the main window, he could see something that made his heart stop. Massive shapes were appearing in space, ships so large they blocked out entire constellations. They were beautiful in a way that hurt to look at, made of materials that seemed to bend light around them. "How many?" Jake asked, though his voice came out as a whisper. 12 ships, sir. Each one is bigger than our largest space station. They're not moving toward Earth, just ... waiting." Jake had trained for this moment his entire life. Humanity's first contact with aliens. But he had never imagined it would be like this. The ships were so advanced, so powerful, that Earth's entire military couldn't hope to fight them if they turned hostile. "Get me President Bennett on the secure line," Jake ordered, "and patch me through to every military commander in the system." While Jake was trying to figure out what to do, people all over Earth were looking up at the sky. In cities and small towns, on farms and in offices, humans stopped what they were doing to stare at the alien ships. Some people were afraid. Others were excited. Many were both. President Lisa Bennett sat in the White House Situation Room, surrounded by her best advisors. General Pete Collins paced back and forth, his face red with anger and fear. They could destroy us without even trying, he said. Those ships are bigger than anything we've ever built. We need to assume they're hostile and prepare for the worst. Or, said Dr. Amy Chun, the government's chief science advisor, we could try to communicate with them. This is the greatest moment in human history. We can't let fear make us do something stupid. Before anyone could argue further, the screens in the room flickered. The image of Captain Morrison appeared, but he wasn't alone. 3 figures stood behind him, and they were definitely not human. The first was tall and thin, made of what looked like living crystal. Light seemed to flow through its body like water. The second kept changing shape, sometimes looking almost human, sometimes becoming something else entirely. The third was the strangest of all. It looked like a person-shaped area of empty space, filled with tiny lights that moved like stars. President Bennett, Jake said, his voice shaking slightly, I'd like you to meet our visitors. They speak English, and they have a message for humanity. The crystal being stepped forward and spoke. Its voice was beautiful, like music made of words. Greetings, humans of Earth. I am Kethra of the Astral Communion. With me are Jorvak of the Morphic Collective and Lysam of the Void Touched. We represent the Galactic Council, a union of peaceful species that has existed for millions of your years. President Bennett leaned forward. Welcome to Earth. We're honored by your visit. What brings you to our world? We come with an offer. Kethra continued. Humanity has achieved faster-than-light travel. This is a great accomplishment. It means you are ready to join the galactic community as our equals. The shapeshifter, Jorvak, spoke next. His voice changed as his body did, sometimes deep, sometimes high. We offer you wonders beyond your imagination. Technology to end hunger and disease. Clean energy that will never run out. Knowledge to heal your planet and travel safely between the stars. The third alien, Lysam, spoke through flashes of light that somehow became words in everyone's head. We offer you wisdom. The combined knowledge of civilizations that have existed since before your son was born. All the mistakes we have made, so you don't have to repeat them. The room was silent. Everyone was thinking the same thing. This was too good to be true. But what choice did they have? These beings could obviously destroy Earth if they wanted. 2. If they were offering friendship instead, humanity would be crazy to refuse. What do you want in return? President Bennett asked. A simple thing, Kethra said. Before we can share our gifts, you must prove you are ready for them. Every species that joins the Council must pass the trial of worthiness. It is not a test of strength or intelligence, but of character and wisdom. Dr. Chun spoke up. What kind of trial? You will be given challenges to solve, Jorvak explained. Problems that test how you work together, how you make difficult choices, how you handle power and responsibility. The trials will take one of your years. If you pass, you will be welcomed as full members of the galactic community. And if we fail? General Collins asked. The aliens looked at each other. There was something in their expressions that made Jake feel uneasy. If you fail, Lysam said, then you are not ready for the responsibilities of galactic citizenship. You will be protected until you naturally evolve to readiness. Your world will be safe, but you will remain here until you are truly prepared. President Bennett looked around the room. Her advisors were all nodding. The offer was amazing, and the alternative seemed to be staying trapped on Earth forever. We accept, she said. Humanity will take your trial. The aliens smiled, at least the ones that had faces. Excellent. The trials will begin in 7 days. We will provide you with the details soon. Until then, we will remain in your solar system as observers. After the aliens left, the room erupted in discussion. Everyone was talking at once, excited and nervous about what was coming. But Jake Morrison stayed quiet. Something about the aliens bothered him. They had been too smooth, too. Prepared. Their offer was perfect, almost like they knew exactly what humanity wanted to hear. Around the world, people were celebrating. The news of first contact spread in minutes. Humans danced in the streets, held parties, and dreamed of a future among the stars. Scientists worked frantically to understand the implications. Religious leaders debated what the aliens meant for human beliefs. But a few people, like Jake, felt worried. Dr. Marcus Webb, a psychologist who studied human behavior, watched the news coverage with growing concern. Something about the aliens' offer didn't feel right. "They're too good to be true," he told his wife Nancy that night. "In my experience, when someone offers you everything you want, they usually want something bigger in return." Nancy laughed. Maybe aliens are just nicer than humans. But Marcus wasn't convinced. He had spent years studying how people manipulated each other. The aliens' presentation had all the hallmarks of a master manipulation. They had studied humanity well enough to know exactly what to offer and how to present it. That night, as he lay in bed, Marcus made a decision. He would volunteer for the trials. Not because he believed in them, but because he wanted to watch the aliens closely. Something was wrong with this picture, and he was going to figure out what it was. In space, the 12 alien ships hung silently in the darkness. Inside them, advanced computers analyzed every human reaction to their offer. They recorded news broadcasts, social media posts, and private conversations. They studied how different groups of humans responded to the announcement. The test had already begun, though the humans didn't know it yet. Every reaction, every decision, every argument about the aliens was being carefully noted and analyzed. The real trial wasn't going to be the challenges they would face in 7 days. The real trial was how humanity responded to the offer itself. And so far, the results were exactly what the Galactic Council had expected. Humans were reacting with excitement, fear, hope, and suspicion all at the same time. They were arguing among themselves about what to do. They were making plans and breaking them. They were being perfectly, chaotically human. The question was, would that be enough to save them? Dr. Marcus Webb stood in the preparation chamber, looking at the other humans who had been selected for the trials. There were 50 people from all over the world: scientists, soldiers, teachers, farmers, and artists. The aliens had chosen them carefully, they said, to represent all of humanity. Remember, Kethra was explaining, these trials are not about winning or losing. They are about showing us who you truly are as a species. Be honest, be yourselves. That is all we ask. Marcus nodded along with the others, but he was watching the aliens carefully. In his 20 years as a psychologist, he had learned to read people. The aliens were harder to understand, but there were patterns in their behavior that bothered him. The first trial was supposed to be simple. Teams of humans would work together to solve environmental problems on a computer-simulated planet. The planet was dying. Its air was poisoned, its water was dirty, and most of its plants and animals were extinct. The humans had to figure out how to fix it using limited resources. Marcus was put on a team with Lieutenant Sarah Kim, a military officer, Dr. Tony Rodriguez, an engineer, and Maria Santos, a teacher from Mexico. They were given a virtual reality headset and told they had 6 hours to save the planet. The simulation was incredibly realistic. Marcus could feel the hot, poisoned air burning his lungs. He could see the dead forests and empty oceans. It was heartbreaking, but also challenging. They had to work together to figure out what had gone wrong and how to fix it. Sarah wanted to build massive machines to clean the air. Tony thought they should focus on the water first. Maria suggested they needed to understand what had killed the planet before they could heal it. Marcus watched his teammates argue and noticed something interesting. The aliens were watching them very closely. But they weren't just watching the humans work together. They were taking notes every time someone got angry or frustrated. They seemed particularly interested when team members disagreed with each other. "Look," Marcus said, interrupting an argument, "between Sarah and Tony. We're all on the same side here. Let's try Maria's idea first. We need to understand the problem before we can solve it." They spent the next hour investigating. The planet had been destroyed by its own people, who had valued short-term profits over long-term survival. Sound familiar, Marcus thought. The solution required the teams to work together, share resources, and make sacrifices for the greater good. Marcus's team succeeded, but barely. They managed to start healing the planet, but it would take hundreds of years to fully recover. Other teams did better or worse, but the aliens seemed equally interested in all the results. After the simulation ended, Marcus overheard Jorvik talking to one of the other aliens in a language that sounded like wind chimes. He couldn't understand the words, but he could hear the tone. They sounded pleased, but not in the way he expected. The second trial was different. This time, each human faced a challenge alone. Marcus found himself in another simulation, but this one was more personal. He was a doctor in a small town during a terrible plague. He had medicine that could save 10 people, but there were 50 people who needed it. The simulation was designed to test moral judgment. Who deserved to be saved? The young or the old? The healthy or the sick? The rich or the poor? There was no right answer, and that was the point. Marcus made his choice based on who had the best chance of surviving and helping others. He saved a mix of people, some young, some old, some in between. He tried to explain his reasoning to the virtual townspeople, but many of them were angry with him. When the simulation ended, Marcus felt drained. The aliens asked him to explain his choices, and he did his best. But he couldn't shake the feeling that they were looking for something specific in his answers. That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about the aliens' behavior during the trials. They said they were testing human character, but their reactions didn't match their words. They seemed more interested in human failures than human successes. He decided to do some investigating. Using his security clearance, he accessed the alien ship's communication systems. He wasn't supposed to be able to understand alien languages, but Marcus had always been good with patterns and codes. What he found made his blood run cold. The aliens weren't just observing the trials. They were recording everything, every human, emotion, every decision, every moment of weakness or strength. But more than that, they were analyzing the data to create psychological profiles of every human involved. Marcus found files on himself, Sarah, Tony, Maria, and dozens of others. The files contained incredibly detailed information about their personalities, their fears, their desires, and their weaknesses. It was like the aliens were building a manual on how to control human behavior. But the most disturbing discovery was a conversation between Kethra and Vexthil, the council leader. Marcus had managed to record it using the ship's own systems. "The humans are reacting exactly as predicted," Kethra was saying. "They show the same patterns we have seen in hundreds of other species. Fear, excitement, hope, and the desire for easy solutions to their problems." "And their failures?" Vexthil asked. "Frequent and predictable. They argue, they compete, they make emotional decisions. But they also show creativity and adaptability that concerns me." "Concerns you how?" "Some of them are not responding as expected. This Dr. Webb, for instance. He seems to be watching us as much as we are watching him. And there are others who show independence that could be problematic." Marcus felt his heart racing. The aliens weren't testing humanity's worthiness to join galactic society. They were testing something else entirely. "What do you recommend?" Vexthil asked. "We continue as planned. If they show too much independence, we adjust the trials to encourage more compliance. The goal remains the same: to determine if they can be safely integrated as a junior species. And if they cannot, then we implement the standard protocols for dangerous species. Isolation until they naturally evolve to a more manageable state. Marcus turned off the recording, his hands shaking. The aliens' offer of membership in the galactic community was a lie. They weren't looking for equals. They were looking for servants. He thought about the trials again, and now everything made sense. The aliens weren't testing human character or wisdom. They were testing human willingness to submit to authority. Every time humans showed independence or creativity, the aliens took note as potential problems to be managed. The next morning, Marcus tried to tell the other humans what he had discovered. But who would believe him? The aliens had been nothing but kind and helpful. They were offering humanity the stars, and Marcus was claiming it was all a trap. Sarah Kim listened to his story with growing concern. She had noticed some odd things too, the way the aliens seemed disappointed when humans succeeded too easily, the way they asked leading questions that seemed designed to make humans doubt themselves. "What do you think we should do?" she asked. "I think we need to be very careful," Marcus said. "The real test isn't what they're telling us. The real test is whether we'll give up our independence for the promise of easy solutions." That day's trial confirmed Marcus's fears. The humans were presented with a problem that seemed impossible to solve using the resources they were given. But the aliens offered to help, to provide advanced technology that would make the solution simple. Most of the human teams accepted the help gratefully. But a few, including Marcus's team, chose to struggle with the limited resources they had been given. They failed to solve the problem completely, but they refused to accept alien assistance. After the trial, Marcus noticed that the aliens paid special attention to the teams that had refused help. They asked more questions, took more notes, and seemed particularly interested in the humans' reasons for refusing assistance. That night, Marcus made a decision. He couldn't prove what the aliens were really doing, but he could prepare for the worst. He began secretly organizing the humans who had shown the most independence during the trials. If his suspicions were correct, they would need to be ready for what was coming. The aliens' test was more dangerous than anyone realized. They weren't just testing humanity's readiness to join galactic society. They were testing humanity's willingness to surrender their freedom. And Marcus was determined to make sure humanity failed that test. As he fell asleep that night, Marcus wondered if the aliens had any idea what they were dealing with. Humans had a long history of refusing to submit to authority, even when it seemed like the smart thing to do. The aliens might have studied human behavior for decades, but they might have missed the most important thing about humanity. When humans were backed into a corner, they didn't surrender. They fought back. The question was, would that be enough to save them from a trap that had been millions of years in the making? Tony Rodriguez had always been good with machines. As an engineer, he understood how things worked, how they fit together, and how to fix them when they broke. But the alien probe his sister Elena had found was different. It wasn't just a machine. It was like a living computer that seemed to think for itself. He had been studying it for weeks in his lab, trying to understand its technology. The aliens had said it was an old piece of equipment, lost in space and found by accident. But Tony was starting to suspect there was more to the story. Late one night, working alone in his laboratory, Tony finally cracked the probe's data core. What he found made him sick to his stomach. The probe contained detailed files on thousands of humans. Not just the people who had participated in the trials, but ordinary people from all over Earth. There were psychological profiles, genetic analyses, and behavioral predictions for farmers in Kansas, teachers in Tokyo, and children in Brazil. But the most disturbing files were the oldest ones. The probe had been collecting data on humanity for over 30 years. It had been watching, listening, and recording everything from satellite communications to internet, traffic to private conversations. Tony's hands shook as he read through the files. The aliens hadn't stumbled across humanity by accident. They had been studying humans for decades, building a complete picture of human society and psychology. The probe wasn't lost space junk. It was a spy device. He found his own file and his sister's. The aliens knew everything about them, their favorite foods, their fears, their dreams, even their childhood memories. They had been watching the CIA Rodriguez family for years, waiting for the right moment to make contact. Tony copied everything to a secure drive and ran to find Dr. Marcus Webb. He had heard that Webb was asking questions about the aliens, and now Tony understood why. "You were right," Tony told Webb, showing him the files. "The aliens have been lying to us from the beginning. They've been watching us for 30 years. Webb studied the data with growing alarm. "This is worse than I thought. Look at this. They have detailed plans for how to control human behavior. They know exactly which buttons to push to make us do what they want." The two men worked through the night, analyzing the probe's data. They found evidence of alien surveillance all over Earth. Hidden devices in major cities, monitors in internet cables, and even nanoscale sensors in the water supply. The aliens had been preparing for this moment for decades, but the most frightening discovery was a series of reports comparing humanity to other species the aliens had encountered. There were hundreds of them, civilizations that had been offered the same deal as humanity. Every single one had accepted the aliens' offer and become what the files called client species. "Look at this," Webb said, pointing to a report about a species called the Deltans. They were offered advanced technology in exchange for joining the galactic community. They accepted, and within 100 years, they had become completely dependent on alien technology. They couldn't even grow food without alien help. Tony read through more files. The pattern was always the same. A species would develop faster than light. Travel, the aliens would make contact, and they would offer a deal. The species would be so excited about the opportunity that they would accept without question. But what happened to the species that refused? Tony asked. Webb pulled up another set of files. That's the scary part. Very few ever refused. The aliens are experts at psychological manipulation. They know exactly how to make their offer seem irresistible. But there were a few exceptions. Tony found reports on 3 species that had rejected the aliens' offer. All 3 had been classified as dangerous and subjected to what the files called protective isolation. They were quarantined, Webb explained, cut off from the rest of the galaxy until they could be safely controlled. Some of them were isolated for thousands of years. Tony felt a chill run down his spine. So if we refuse their offer, we get locked in our solar system forever, unless we find a way to break free on our own. The 2 men realized they had to warn the others, but they knew it wouldn't be easy. The aliens had been very careful to make their offer seem genuine. Most humans still believed they were lucky to have been chosen for galactic citizenship. The next morning, Tony and Webb approached Colonel Rachel Adams, the head of Earth's military response team. She was a tough, no-nonsense woman who had always been suspicious of the aliens' motives. "I knew something was wrong," she said after reviewing the evidence. "The aliens have been too smooth, too prepared. Real first contact would be messier, more awkward. These guys act like they've done this 1,000 times before." "Because they have," Webb said. "And it's always ended the same way. The contacted species becomes dependent on alien technology and loses its independence." Colonel Adams studied the files more carefully. "Look at this. The aliens have detailed plans for Earth's future. They want to establish permanent bases on our planet, control our communications, and monitor our population. This isn't a partnership. It's an occupation. The three of them began secretly contacting other humans who had shown independence during the trials. Sarah Kim, the military officer, was one of the first to join their group. So was Maria Santos, the teacher who had impressed everyone with her creative problem-solving. "We need to be careful," Adams warned. "The aliens are monitoring everything." "We do. If they realize we know the truth, they might speed up their timeline." The group began meeting in secret, using coded messages and avoiding electronic communications. They called themselves the Independence Movement, and their goal was simple: find a way to expose the aliens' true intentions and give humanity a choice. But they quickly realized they faced a huge problem. The aliens had been preparing for this moment for decades. They had studied human psychology, identified key leaders, and planned responses to every possible scenario. They even had contingency plans for dealing with human resistance. According to these files, Webb said, the aliens expect about 5% of humans to resist their offer. They have specific strategies for dealing with resistors: isolation, discrediting, and if necessary, removal. Tony felt his blood run cold. Removal? The files aren't specific, but it sounds like they're willing to eliminate humans who pose a threat to their plans. The group realized they were running out of time. The aliens had announced that the trials would end in 2 weeks, and then humanity would need to give its final answer. President Bennett and most world leaders were already planning to accept. The aliens offer, "We need proof," Adams said. "Something that will convince people that the aliens aren't what they seem." Tony had an idea. What if we could get them to admit the truth? If we could record them talking about their real plans? Webb nodded. "That might work, but we'd need to be very careful. If they catch us, we're finished." The group spent the next week preparing. They installed hidden recording devices in the alien ship, using technology that was primitive enough to avoid detection. They also began spreading subtle doubts about the aliens' offer, asking questions that made other humans think more carefully about the deal. Their breakthrough came when Sarah Kim overheard a conversation between 2 alien technicians. They were discussing the integration protocols for humanity, and they mentioned something about compliance conditioning and resistance elimination. Using the hidden recording devices, the group captured several conversations between alien leaders. The recordings revealed the truth. The aliens saw humanity as a potential threat that needed to be controlled. They had no intention of treating humans as equals. "The human species shows dangerous levels of independence and creativity," they heard Kethra say. "If we allow them to develop freely, they could become a threat to galactic stability within a few centuries." "Then we proceed with standard integration protocols?" another alien asked. "Yes, we offer them advanced technology to make them dependent on us, then gradually increase our control over their society. Within 100 years, they will be completely manageable." The group now had the proof they needed, but they also realized they were in terrible danger. The aliens had been planning this for decades, and they wouldn't give up easily. "We need to get this information to the world leaders," Adams said. "But we also need to be ready for the aliens' response. They're not going to just accept defeat." Webb looked at the evidence they had gathered. "You know what the scariest part is? The aliens genuinely believe they're helping us. They think independence is dangerous, and that we'll be better off under their control." "That makes them even more dangerous," Tony said. "People who think they're doing good will go to any lengths to achieve their goals." The group prepared for the most important presentation in human history. They would have one chance to convince the world that the aliens' offer was a trap. If they failed, humanity would voluntarily surrender its freedom in exchange for the promise of easy solutions to its problems. But as they prepared, Tony couldn't shake the feeling that the aliens were already one step ahead of them. They had been planning this for so long, and they understood human psychology so well. Did humanity really have a chance against beings who had been perfecting their manipulation techniques for millions of years? The answer would come soon. In just a few days, the world would have to choose between freedom and security, between independence and dependence, between the emergency session of the United Nations was unlike anything the world had ever seen. Representatives from every country sat in the Great Hall while billions of people watched on television and internet streams. The alien representatives Kethra, Jorvak, and Lysam floated gracefully near the main stage, expecting to witness humanity's grateful acceptance of their generous offer. President Lisa Bennett walked to the podium, her face calm but her hands trembling slightly. She looked out at the assembled delegates, then up at the cameras that were broadcasting this moment to the entire world. "Fellow humans," she began, "we are here today to make the most important decision in our species' history. We have been offered a place among the stars, advanced technology, and the wisdom of civilizations that have existed for millions of years." The alien representatives smiled, or at least Kethra and Jorvak did. Lysame's lights pulsed in what seemed like satisfaction. However, President Bennett continued, "Before we make this decision, there is something the world needs to know." She nodded to Dr. Marcus Webb, who stood up from his seat in the audience. Behind him, Tony Rodriguez, Colonel Rachel Adams, and several other members of the independence movement also rose. "Dr. Webb," the president said, "please share your findings with the assembly." Webb walked to the podium, carrying a tablet loaded with evidence. His voice was steady as he began to speak, but his words sent shockwaves through the hall. "Distinguished delegates, people of Earth, what I am about to tell you will be difficult to accept. The aliens have been lying to us." A murmur of disbelief rippled through the assembly. The alien representatives looked confused, though Kethra's crystal form seemed to flicker slightly. Webb activated the main screen, showing the data Tony had extracted from the alien probe. "This evidence proves that our visitors have been watching humanity for over 30 years. They have detailed psychological profiles on thousands of humans, plans for controlling our behavior, and strategies for making us dependent on their technology." The evidence was overwhelming. Surveillance data, psychological manipulation techniques, and most damning of all, the recorded conversations between alien leaders discussing humanity as a threat to be controlled rather than partners to be welcomed. Kethra's musical voice suddenly turned sharp. "These accusations are false. We have come in peace to offer you a better future." "Have you?" Webb challenged. "Then explain this." The speakers filled with Kethra's own voice from the recorded conversations. "The human species shows dangerous levels of independence and creativity. If we allow them to develop freely, they could become a threat to galactic stability within a few centuries." The hall erupted in angry voices. Representatives shouted questions at the aliens, who for the first time since their arrival looked uncertain. Jorvak tried to shift the conversation. "You are taking our words out of context. We only want to guide you, to help you avoid the mistakes other species have made." Colonel Adams stood up from her seat. "By turning us into slaves? We've seen your files on other species. Every civilization you've helped has become completely dependent on you. They can't even feed themselves without alien technology." "That is not slavery," Lysam's lights flashed angrily. "That is protection. Young species are dangerous to themselves and others. We provide guidance until they mature." "For how long?" Webb asked. "Some of the species in your files have been under your protection for thousands of years. When exactly do they graduate to independence?" The aliens had no answer. President Bennett returned to the podium. "In light of this evidence, I believe we need to reconsider our response to the aliens' offer." But before she could continue, a voice from the back of the hall interrupted her. "Wait, All eyes turned to see Maria Santos walking down the aisle. The teacher from Mexico had been quiet during most of the trials, but now she spoke with a clear, strong voice that carried to every corner of the room. "I want to say something," Maria announced. "I'm just a teacher. I'm not a scientist or a soldier or a politician, but I've spent my life working with children, and I know something about growing up." She looked directly at the alien representatives. "You say you want to protect us, to guide us until we're ready for independence. But that's not how you help someone grow up. You don't make them dependent on you. You give them the tools they need, and then let them make their own mistakes." Maria's voice grew stronger. "My students don't learn by having me do their homework for them. They learn by struggling with problems, making mistakes, and figuring things out for themselves. That's how they become capable adults." She turned to address the entire assembly. "These aliens are offering to be our parents forever. They want to solve all our problems for us, make all our decisions for us, keep us safe from everything including ourselves. But we're not children anymore. We've earned the right to make our own choices, even if they're wrong choices." The hall was completely silent. Maria's simple words had cut through all the complex arguments in politics to reach the heart of the matter. "I've been thinking about this for weeks," Maria continued, "and I've made up my mind. I don't want alien technology that comes with strings attached. I don't want their protection if it means giving up our freedom. I'd rather spend my whole life struggling with problems we could solve instantly with their help if it means we get to solve them ourselves." She looked back at the aliens. "Thank you for your offer, but we choose to grow up on our own." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Delegates from around the world stood up, applauding Maria's words. The sound echoed through the hall like thunder. President Bennett stepped back to the microphone. "Is there any debate on this matter?" A few delegates spoke in favor of accepting the alien offer, but they were vastly outnumbered. The evidence of alien deception and Maria's passionate speech had swayed even those who had been most eager for alien technology. When the vote was called, it wasn't even close. By a margin of nearly 10-1, humanity rejected the aliens' offer. Alien representatives were stunned. Cathra's crystalline form flickered rapidly, while Jorvik couldn't seem to maintain any stable shape. Lysam's lights pulsed in what could only be described as panic. "This is unprecedented," Kethra said, his musical voice now discordant. "No species has ever rejected our offer of membership in the galactic community." "Then maybe you need to reconsider your offer," President Bennett replied. "If you want to be our friends, you can start by treating us as equals, not children who need protection." "But you don't understand," Jorvik pleaded, his form shifting rapidly between different shapes. "The galaxy is dangerous. There are threats you cannot imagine. Without our protection, your species could be destroyed." Captain Jake Morrison, who had been silent throughout the proceedings, finally spoke up. "Maybe that's a risk we're willing to take. Freedom has always been dangerous. That's what makes it worth having." The aliens tried to negotiate, offering different deals and compromises. But humanity's answer remained the same. They wanted friendship, not protection. Partnership, not guidance. The right to make their own mistakes and learn from them. Finally, Kethra spoke with resignation in his voice. "Very well. If this is your final decision, we will respect it. But understand that this choice comes with consequences. You will receive no help from the galactic community. You will have to solve all your problems alone. We understand," President Bennett said, "and we accept those consequences." The aliens left Earth that same day. Their massive ships disappeared into hyperspace, leaving humanity alone in the solar system once again. But something had changed. For the first time in their history, humans had been offered everything they thought they wanted and had chosen to refuse it in the weeks that followed. The world threw itself into new projects with unprecedented enthusiasm. Scientists worked on clean energy and space travel. Engineers designed better ships and computers. Teachers like Maria Santos helped children understand that the hardest path was often the best path. Dr. Webb published his research on the aliens' manipulation techniques, helping humanity understand how they had almost been tricked into surrendering their freedom. Tony Rodriguez reverse-engineered what he could from the alien probe, giving human technology a boost without making it dependent on alien help. Not everyone was happy with the decision. Some people argued that humanity had thrown away its best chance for a better future. But most people felt something they hadn't expected: pride. They had been tested, and they had chosen the harder path because it was the right path. Years passed. Earth's problems didn't disappear overnight, but humans worked together to solve them. They developed clean energy, ended hunger, and began to heal their planet. It was slow, difficult work, but it was their work. When human ships finally reached the stars under their own power, they did so as free beings, not as protected children. And somewhere in the galaxy, the Galactic Council watched with a mixture of concern and respect as humanity began to spread among the